Genesis chapter 2, right. We're diving deep into this one, folks. Get ready to see some surprising stuff.
It's more than just the Garden of Eden, that's for sure. There's a lot that people miss because they don't realize that the story actually starts before the garden.
Oh, interesting. So we're not just talking apples and serpents here. What's the significance of starting before the garden?
Well, it sets the stage for everything that follows. You see, it establishes a rhythm, a pattern. God rests on the seventh day, not because he's tired, but to make it holy. This act sets up the flow of time, work, and rest, It's a rhythm we still feel today.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. It's like the universe is taking a deep breath before diving into the story.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of the universe, there's a very curious detail. In verse 6, it talks about a mist that waters the earth. Not rain, but a mist. And that's not something you just casually mention in a text like this.
Yeah, it seems oddly specific for such an ancient text. Why do you think the writer made a point of saying it was a mist?
Well, it suggests a completely different way of understanding the world, at least compared to how we see it today. Imagine if the concept of rain was totally foreign. Instead, life-giving water came up from the earth, like the planet was breathing it out.
Wow, I'm getting chills. It completely changes the imagery. It makes it seem like the earth itself is alive, in a way that we don't really think about anymore.
Right. And, while we're talking about life, things get even more interesting when you get to the part about Adam being created. He's actually formed before the plants, which, if you're thinking about a literal timeline, seems kind of out of order, right?
That's true. You'd think plants would come first, right? They're the basis of the food chain, after all. So why do you think the writer put it in that order?
Well, you have to remember, this isn't a science textbook. It's conveying a deeper message. Placing humans last in this creation story isn't an accident. It establishes a hierarchy, a deliberate act of giving humans dominion over nature.
Now, that is a powerful thought. It's amazing how one small detail like that has fueled centuries of debate. You know what I mean? It really shaped how we see our role on this planet.
Absolutely. And to really drive home the significance of humans, notice how much detail is given to the Garden of Eden's location, even listing the rivers and precious stones.
It's true. It's almost like the writer wants us to be able to find it on a map. Why go into so much detail about the geography?
Well, I think for the original audience, this level of detail was important because it made the story feel real and tangible, like a place they could almost reach out and touch. But it also, perhaps subconsciously, hints at how desirable and abundant Eden was, a land overflowing with riches, both natural and precious.
It really does sound idyllic, doesn't it? Like something out of a dream. But then, smack dab in the middle of all this paradise, we get the tree of knowledge. Why is this tree, out of all the trees in the garden, so important?
Well, this is where things get really interesting, right? Because we're not just talking about a tree anymore, are we? It's about free will. God gives Adam a choice, and that choice comes with responsibility. Yeah. And bam, you've got the whole drama of the Bible set in motion right there. Obedience versus disobedience, knowledge versus innocence. It all comes down to this one choice.
It's incredible, isn't it, how one tree can represent so much. And speaking of big ideas packed into small packages, there's that other line that always gets me. It is not good for man to be alone. It's like, boom, fundamental truth about human beings right there in Genesis.
Exactly. This need for companionship, it's not just some afterthought, It's presented as a basic human need.
Yeah.
And it's not just about practicality either, right? It speaks to this deeper need for connection, the kind of emotional and spiritual wholeness that we get from relationships.
And that idea of connection, it goes beyond just humans too, doesn't it? I mean, Adam gets to name all the animals. It always seemed like a strange detail to me why include that.
Oh, it's anything but random. Think about it. To name something implies a certain authority over it. A deep understanding. There's a kind of intimacy there. It suggests that humans were meant to be caretakers, stewards of the natural world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a shame we seem to have forgotten that part, wouldn't you say?
It really is. And that brings us, of course, to Eve and how she was created from Adam's rib, which, throughout history has been misinterpreted, wouldn't you? I mean, it can't be just a throwaway detail, right?
Exactly. There's got to be a deeper meaning there. What do you make of it?
Well, to me, it speaks to this inherent connection between men and women, you see. Eve's not created separately from some other element, but from Adam himself. It points to this fundamental equality, a shared origin. She's not an afterthought, but an essential part of the whole.
It really drives home the point, doesn't it? They're two halves of the same whole, Not one more important than the other. Man, it's amazing how these little details add up.
It really is. And it makes you think, even with a story we all think we know, like Adam and Eve, there's always something new to discover.
100%. So, wow, we've gone from the creation of the universe to the very heart of human relationships all in one chapter. Genesis is really something else. What about you? Anything in this deep dive that really stood out for you?
It's so easy to forget about these stories. We hear them as kids and they kind of fade into the background. But coming back to Genesis chapter 2 like this, I'm struck by how relevant it still feels. The questions it wrestles with, I mean. Who are we? What does it mean to have free will when our choices have such power? These aren't just ancient questions, they're the questions. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. It's like we're all still living in the shadow of that garden, aren't we? Every choice we make, it matters. Not just for us, but for everything around us.
Exactly. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from Genesis chapter 2, Our choices have weight. They ripple outward. They impact not just our little corner of the world, but the whole thing. It's a big responsibility.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? So next time you hear about Adam and Eve, remember, it's more than just a garden, right? It's about creation. It's about choice. And it's about realizing that we're all part of something much, much bigger than ourselves.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Toby, Eleanor, and our team of researchers are working hard to produce more episodes. If you value what we're doing here, please consider subscribing and sharing the word. Additionally, our podcast, RSS, and Patreon links can be found below. Listener support is what makes our work possible. Join us next time for another deep dive. God bless.